Good morning. It is Thursday, January the 17th, and this is The Drill. Thank you very much. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States of America today, because I'm the only one that makes the presumption for the status quo, talking to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers. Once upon a time, the teacher of Moses called upon mankind with a warning. At a certain date, he said, all the water in the world which had not been specially hoarded would disappear. It would then be renewed with different water, which would drive men mad. Only one man listened to the meaning of this advice. He collected water and went to a secure place where he stored it and waited for the water to change its character. On the appointed date, the stream stopped running, the wells went dry, and the man who had listened, seeing this happening, went to his retreat and drank his preserved water. When he saw from his security the waterfalls again beginning to flow, this man descended among the other sons of men. He found that they were thinking and talking in an entirely different way from before. Yet they had no memory of what had happened, nor of having been warned. When he tried to talk to them, he realized that they thought that he was mad, and they showed hostility or compassion, not understanding. At first he drank none of the new water, but went back to his concealment to draw on his supplies every day. Finally, however, he took the decision to drink the new water, because he could not bear the loneliness of living, behaving, and thinking in a different way from everyone else. He drank the new water and became like the rest. Then he forgot all about his own store of special water, and his fellows began to look upon him as a madman who had miraculously been restored to sanity. And I read this story because it illustrates the nature of the battle in the United States of America today. The battle is not political, it's not even social. It's psychologistic, it's about sanity. So I was listening to Glenn Beck here a minute ago, and he was telling a story about that he had read about a light pole that had fallen over in San Francisco, and had fallen over and almost hurt or killed somebody. And so it's a very dramatic event, and turns out that the reason that this, after doing an investigation, the city government found out that the reason that the light pole had fallen over was because of urination. That homeless people in San Francisco had been urinating on this pole for a long enough period of time that it corroded the metal and caused it to topple over. And then Glenn Beck went on about, how there's feces in the city and blah, 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 blah. And I started thinking, well, okay, this is typical of Glenn Beck. It's typical of Rush Limbaugh. And in that, this is a problem with no solution. Because, again, he didn't offer any solutions. What is it we should do about that? Those of us that don't live in San Francisco. If you live in San Francisco, maybe one of the best ideas is move. But for everyone else, what are we supposed to do about that? What is this supposed to serve as some sort of a warning? And about what? And the only thing I can guess is that Glenn Beck is basically saying that, again, the reason San Francisco is like this is because it has a liberal Democrat government. And that, therefore, if it had a better government, a Republican conservative government, that these kinds of things wouldn't be happening, and the city would be better off for it. In other words, that we must have politics and politicians to run our lives, that we cannot run our lives and determine our own fates without mayors and city councils and other types of politicians, that life is top down, that our life is going to be whatever it is the politicians want our life to be. And it's simply not true. It goes the other direction. The reason that the San Francisco has the kind of government it does is because of 30, 40, 50 years of indoctrination in their schools, in public media, the news, the television, radio, and print. And by allowing themselves to become indoctrinated, they have gone ahead and voted in the very government that, yes, because ultimately he's right that it is the government that's allowing this to happen and even encouraging this to happen by going ahead and, in essence, promoting homelessness. But it is the people that voted these folks in and continue to vote them in, continue to reelect them. And you would think, why would you do that if you're having to step around human feces as you walk down the street, or have to dodge poles that are falling down because they've been urinated on constantly? Why would you vote in the same people, the same mayors, the same city council over and over and over again? And the answer is brainwashing. And that's a brainwashing that has taken place over the course of years and decades. We get the government that we set ourselves up for, that when we allow ourselves to become brainwashed and we don't question things that we know need to be questioned, these are the results. We end up with this kind of government and the resulting poor living standards in the places that we live. So again, the way to defeat that is, and get unbrainwashed, so to speak, is to recognize that there's a problem, and you and I need to deal with our neighbors, our relatives, our coworkers, because that's where the battle is. It's not in the mayor's office. It's not in city council. It's you and me and our relatives and friends in our homes, at the grocery store, on the soccer fields. That's where the battles take place. As long as conservatives allow themselves to be intimidated, bullied and intimidated by the left is going to continue to run rampant in the state of California in particular, and do whatever the hell they feel like. So, and that's one of the points of what this show is all about, trying to show conservatives that not only can liberals and socialists be defeated, but they can be defeated very easily. Okay, so when I come back, I'm going to be reading from the Ayn Rand lexicon, and then after that, I'm going to be reading some more of the covert emotional manipulation techniques. Thank you very much. And emergencies, that's the concept of the day for the Ayn Rand lexicon. It is important to differentiate between the rules of conduct in an emergency situation and the rules of conduct in the normal conditions of human existence. This does not mean a double standard of morality. The standard and the basic principles remain the same, but their application to either case requires precise definitions. An emergency is an unchosen, unexpected event limited in time that creates conditions under which human survival is impossible, such as a flood, an earthquake, a fire, or a shipwreck. In an emergency situation, men's primary goal is to combat the disaster, escape the danger, and restore normal conditions, to reach dry land, to put out the fire, etc. By normal conditions, I mean metaphysically normal in the nature of things, and appropriate to human existence. Men can live on land, but not in water or in a raging fire. Since men are not omnipotent, it is metaphysically possible for unforeseeable disasters to strike them, in which case their only task is to return their lives, to return to those conditions under which their lives can continue. By its nature, an emergency situation is temporary. If it were to last, men would perish. It is only in emergency situations that one should volunteer to help strangers, if it is in one's power. For instance, a man who values human life and is caught in a shipwreck should help to save his fellow passengers, though not at the expense of his own life. But this does not mean that after they all reach shore, he should devote his efforts to saving his fellow passengers from poverty, ignorance, neuroses, or whatever other troubles they might have. Nor does it mean that he should spend his life sailing the seven seas in search of shipwreck victims to save. The principle that one should help men in an emergency cannot be extended to regard all human suffering as an emergency and to turn the misfortune of some into a mortgage on the lives of others. The other thing that I wanted to cover here, because emergencies, this whole thing about emergencies is about creating exceptions. So if you come out with hard and fast rules and ethics, it's usually about ethics, and ethics is about what it is you do or you don't do, and that ethics are supposed to be universal and, again, hard and fast. So not flexible. So the way that the liberals slash socialists attack that and undermine ethics is with the emergency scenario. They'll ask, what if? What if? And so you get the what if question. Anytime you're making a statement of certainty, by the way, you're liable to get a what if question from a liberal. And it's the basis of the what if question, the subtext is part of skepticism. The payoff of skepticism is the idea that anything is possible. And so when they ask you what if, the right answer is to say it won't happen. Right? So what if there's an emergency? The right answer to that question is there won't be. And that's the end of that'll be the end of the conversation. Now, they'll probably may not give up easily and come back and ask you again, no, but seriously, what if there's an emergency? No, but seriously, there won't be. You have to do it that way, because otherwise what you're doing is you're conceding the point, and you lose the argument automatically. Okay, if you go ahead and tell them, well, if there's an emergency, then, well, let's see, then and then I guess it wouldn't apply. It's like the old idea that, that you usually get when you say don't lie. Can't lie. Okay, lying is bad, lying is wrong, always, forever, and for everybody. Oh, yeah? Well, what if the Nazis come knocking on your door and they want to, and you're hiding Jews? The right answer to that question is, it won't happen. No, but seriously, I mean, like, what if it did? No, but seriously, it's not going to happen. That's it. Because otherwise, if you go ahead and you play that little mind game there, little mind experiment, you've already conceded the point. You've already conceded the point, and the point is anything is possible. And if anything is possible, then how can you if anything is possible, then reality doesn't exist. And if reality doesn't exist, then there are no ethics. There are no morals. The world is wide open. You can do whatever you think you can get away with. And it's just simply not true. Don't concede the point. Republicans, conservatives spend too much time conceding the point. If anybody wants to talk to you about it and have a debate about reality, you say no. You say there's nothing to debate. If anyone wants to asks you, and assuming you're a Christian, that hey, what about let's debate about the existence of God? The answer to that is no, thank you. There is no debate to be had. Okay, because to concede, to ask, to go ahead and have the debates, because you may think, well, there's no harm in that. I might actually turn them into a Christian, or I might bring them around about reality. No, because they're lying. They're absolutely lying. They're either lying by commission or omission. In the case of reality, they're committing a lie. They know what reality is, and we know that by the way they act. And in the case of God, they're lying by omission, pretending, ignoring all of the things that they cannot explain. Right? So they ignore that, and that leaves them, and also ignoring the fact that it's faith either way. Either you have faith there is God, or you have faith that there isn't. But either way, it's a matter of faith. There's no escaping religion, in other words. If you're an atheist, you're just as religious as I am. Okay, I'm a Christian. I believe that Jesus Christ died for my sins, and by believing in Him, that my sins will be washed away. And that's my religion. Atheism is equally a religion, although the atheists want to pretend that it's not. It is, because it's as much based on faith as mine. I have faith in Jesus Christ. They have faith that Jesus Christ doesn't exist. Okay, they come to me and demand that I prove that God exists, prove that Jesus Christ exists, but they will provide no proof that either God or Jesus Christ doesn't exist. And without proof, it's faith. That's it. It's a religious thing. But anyways, the point is that if they come to you and say, let's have a debate, and you think, well, that sounds reasonable. Once you begin the debate, you've lost, because you've already conceded the point that maybe God doesn't exist. Okay? It would be like if somebody says to you, let's debate 2 + 2 = 4. Why would you do that? To have a debate about it is to concede that maybe it doesn't. So, this, when it comes to reality, it comes to religion, you don't enter the debate at all. So you got to watch out for those kinds of things. And and the same thing with Ayn Rand. She would have done better in this particular definition to go a little bit deeper and introduce the idea of skepticism and skepticism's payoff, which is the possibility theory. You hear about people that refer to themselves as possibility thinkers. That's what they mean. They think that skepticism means that anything is possible. No, it's a lie. It's not wrong. It's a lie. It's just a flat out lie. So don't be taken in by it. And as a conservative, and it's important that you not be taken in by this. It's important to give the right answers to the liberals and deal with them in the right way, because whether or not these folks, when they walk away from you, are going to be emboldened to continue agitating for their socialist revolution or whatever, or whether or not they're going to walk away from you scratching their heads thinking, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I need to find another way. That's going to be up to you and I. Okay, so when I come back, I'm going to be picking up where we left off on the 30 covert emotional manipulation techniques. All right, so we've gone through, thank you very much, we've gone through the first 10 of them yesterday, and I started this, I believe, on Monday, and so I've been reading 3 or 4 a day each day. So now we're at number 11, which is shame. And these are all techniques that are used, I would say, primarily by narcissists, that they use to manipulate people. Instead of being direct with people and trying to get people to convince people to do things that they want done, to come out and say, I'd really like it. I'd feel better if you did this, or I would like it if you did that. I need you to do whatever. Instead, they want to play mind games. And this is what socialists do all the time. And the socialists, the liberals, do this because they're fascinated with power. Dealing with things in terms of right and wrong is boring to them. They're bored with it. Oh, big deal. I got to go do research, look things up, try to formulate an argument, be logical. It's much more fun to be able to use phrases, use words as weapons, and watch people dance and do what it is that you want them to do. So back to the book. Shame. We feel shame when someone communicates to us that we're not worthy of respect. A manipulator makes a victim feel shame by expressing disgust or disappointment, using sarcasm or put-downs, or comparing us to someone else they claim to think is better in some way. Shame is a very powerful tool for a manipulator. Few emotional states are more painful than shame. We feel guilty for what we do, but we feel shame for what we are. Shame is a feeling of deep humiliation, and some manipulators enjoy making their victim feel humiliated. It places them in a superior position. According to clinical psychologist Gershon Kaufman, quote, shame is the most disturbing experience individuals ever have about themselves. No other emotion feels more deeply disturbing because in the moment of shame, the self feels wounded from within, unquote. In relationships, we feel shame from anything we say or do that we believe weakens the bond or causes rejection. Many of the manipulation tactics described here accomplish one or both of those. Shame can turn into the pervasive belief that you are in some way inherently defective or unacceptable. So this manipulation tactic can cause serious psychological harm. Your sense of self-worth will suffer, and you will have a negative effect on all, and that will have a negative effect on all aspects of your life. And it reminds me of my foster parents, who happened to be from Holland, and they were socialists. The my foster mother was really the kind of the big socialist. They never ever quoted Marx. They never spouted socialist dogma. It was the way they lived their lives and their attitudes that said they were socialist. Again, he was more, he was along for the ride. She's his wife, so he feels he has to be loyal to her. So that was kind of the way he was about things. But she was a down for the struggle socialist. She lived her life like a socialist. Everything as far as she was concerned, every time somebody wanted her to spend money, she felt was a capitalist plot to separate her from her money. It wasn't just an issue of getting the best deal. It was an issue of sticking it to the man, kind of an attitude. And she hated America. She was only here because there was no work in Holland. There's no place to live in Holland. They got here in 1960. And 15 years after the war ended. And I'm sure Holland in 1960 was probably still, a lot of it was probably still in rubble. And again, not a lot of places to live and certainly not a lot of jobs to be had. So they immigrate to the United States. And of course, they end up being successful. They buy a home and all that good stuff. Of course, he likes it here. He likes baseball. He likes jazz. He likes it here. She doesn't. But the shame part of it is, I remember it was a time I was playing Pop Warner football, and I was in my football uniform, ready to go to get driven to either practice or to the game. And my foster mother comes in, and she goes, "Ugh," into the room. I was in the living room, so she comes in the living room, goes, "Ugh," and turns around, starts to walk away, and she goes, "I won't be in the same room with him while he's wearing that monkey suit." Again, trying to shame me because I played football. At first, I was thinking that it was about the sport, but it wasn't until years later that I figured out it was because the sport was what the sport represented, and that's America. In her mind, nothing was more American than American football, and so me wearing the uniform is like waving the flag, and or in this case, more apt analogy would be a red flag in front of a bull. It just pissed her off to no end. And so she worked on shaming me. And every time I would do certain things or say certain things, she would bristle. She would, "Oh, that's so American." As though being an American was the dirtiest, filthiest thing on the face of the earth. And remember, again, these are people from Holland. And Holland was rescued from German occupation by who? At least in part, I think Canadians and the Brits helped, but by Americans. But no sense of gratitude on her part. No. Because again, as far as she's concerned, America was capitalism, all about capitalism and all about people trying to screw you. And she's wrong. But the point is that whenever she could, she would put a shame thing on me. Not a guilt trip, but try to shame me for being who I was, an American. Number 12, empty words. Quote, "The basic tool for the manipulation of reality is the manipulation of words." Unquote. Quote from Philip K. Dick. "Manipulators are liars who think nothing of making a promise or commitment they have no intention of keeping. They are also consummate seducers who can turn on the charm and tell you exactly what you want to hear. I love you. You're so special to me. I don't know how I got so lucky. I've waited my whole life for you." When a manipulator utters these words, they are backed up by nothing. But you may not notice that his or her actions are telling it a very different story. Using empty words to fulfill your need for approval, love, validation, admiration, appreciation, or reassurance gives a manipulator incredible power over you. They tell you what you want to hear in order to get what they want. Always remember, actions speak louder than words. If you feel confused because someone tells you that they love you, but they don't act like they do, judge them by their actions alone. You will have your answer. Excuse me. 13. Crazy making. It's called crazy making for a reason. When using this tactic, a manipulator simply denies ever having said something they did indeed say. It could happen a month later, a year later, or a minute later. You know the manipulator said it. They know they said it, and they know they said it. But none of that matters. They will simply insist that they never said whatever it is what they said and hope that you believe them. If you feel you need to have a tape recorder running whenever you talk to someone, you are a victim of crazy making. Number 14, gaslighting. Using the technique of gaslighting, the manipulator denies and therefore invalidates reality. Invalidating reality distorts or undermines the victim's perceptions of their world and can even lead them to question their own sanity. Quote, I don't know where you got that idea. It's all in your head. You've always had a bad memory. That never happened. Are you crazy? You must be trying to confuse me. You're imagining things. I have no idea what you're talking about. Unquote. This kind of deception seems like it would be obvious, but it usually begins very gradually and increases in frequency and severity over time. It leads to anxiety, depression, and confusion. Victims eventually question their version of reality. When they no longer trust their own perceptions, they rely on the manipulator to define reality and can no longer function independently. Having rendered the victim completely helpless and lacking in any self-esteem, the manipulator is able to exercise total domination and get whatever it is they want, whether it is a feeling of superiority, financial control, or sexual benefits. Examples of gaslighting. A manipulator claims that the victim is mistaken in her belief that he wanted a committed long-term relationship, even though everything he did and said created that belief. A manipulator says something in an angry tone of voice, but when the victim becomes upset, the manipulator denies having used an angry tone. A manipulator deliberately upsets a victim and then mocks them or puts them down for overreacting. A manipulator purposely withholds certain details and later tries convincing the victim that they did indeed tell them the missing details. A manipulator moves items from one place to another and then denies having done so. A manipulator asserts something untrue with enough conviction and intensity that the victim believes it. You might be a victim of gaslighting if you apologize often, have trouble making decisions, have changed significantly over the course of the relationship, feel you're in a constant state of bewilderment, or have become reclusive and withdrawn. Gaslighting is even more effective when used in combination with other techniques of manipulation. You may have noticed that many other tactics include the element of denying a victim's reality. And this is, again, all of these techniques are not only techniques that can be used in personal relationships, friendships, romantic relationships, marriages, etc., but they can also be used at work. And also they can be used in the political arena. You can see that on television or hear it on the radio when politicians play these mental games with each other and with the public. Number 15, minimizing. The manipulator uses this tactic to convince you that something she said was that was wrong really wasn't as bad as you think it is. She will tell you that you're making a big deal out of nothing or that you're exaggerating or overreacting when you confront her about her wrongdoing. You can be sure that if a manipulator uses this tactic, they will engage in the same bad behavior in the future. And number 16, this is one of my favorites, the silent treatment. Supposedly because of something you did, the manipulator refuses to communicate with you and uses emotional or physical withdrawal as punishment. This is commonly called the silent treatment, stonewalling, or withholding. It conveys contempt and communicates that you are not worth the manipulator's acknowledgement of your existence, let alone his or her time, love, attention, or consideration. According to Steve Becker, LCSW, he writes, quote, the silencer's aim is, above all, to silence communication. More specifically, it is to render the other invisible and, in so doing, induce feelings of powerlessness and shame, unquote. Becker says the silent treatment, quote, is a technique of torture. This may sound hyperbolic, but human beings need, on the most basic level, recognition of their existence. The withholding of this recognition, especially if protracted, can have soul-warping consequences on personality, unquote. Giving the silent treatment is an effective way for a manipulator to get you to behave as he or she wants you to. And my foster mother, it describes her to a T. There's one thing to give you the cold shoulder where you come into the house and you say hi, and they say something like that. My foster mother pretended you didn't exist. She wouldn't talk to you. She wouldn't look at you. That was the way. And again, it was manipulative. It was get you to break down, and it was as crushing as described. It was a very, very crushing experience. The only thing that got me through it was being able to analyze it and figure out that she's indeed playing a game. And I end up saying, okay, well, if you want to play this game, I'll play it too. So we end up, from certain periods of time, ignoring each other. And I wasn't the only one in the family that she would do this with. This is one of her favorite techniques. Whenever she was frustrated or disappointed with people, is she would go ahead and ignore them. So let's see. So we got, I'm at number 17, lying, but I think I'm going to go ahead and save that one for next time, tomorrow. And now I'm giving all these techniques, but later on in the book, the author is going to show how it is that one can defeat these techniques. And so that's where it's going to be the payoff to this. So be patient. We're about halfway through this list. And as we go through the book, again, we will get to the point where we show you how it is that you can be more effective in dealing with manipulative people, usually liberals and socialists. So that brings us to the conclusion of another episode of The Drill. And until next time, thank you for listening and have a great day.